Noble Lord, Lord Ravensdale, and I should perhaps declare my position as Vice President of the Local Government Association in offering my support for his Amendment 168, which I would have signed had I seen it. I think the Noble Lord has set out very clearly the arguments for this. I will just add the point that this would be a real significant step forward in energy democracy in terms of decisions not being made centralised down in Westminster, but actually decisions being made in local areas by local people. And I think back to an event that I attended with Gina Dowding, who was then the MEP for the North West, which dates that the event rather precisely. And there was actual work going on by a wide range of organisations in the North West seeking to look at how they went renewables across the region. And I think what we would see with this kind of plan for local authorities is different local authorities would be able to band together in different ways according to what worked in terms of the geography and the energy supply systems. And that would be a really flexible, effective way of doing that. And just one more point to make on 168. I was actually last month in Kyiv talking to energy managers who had suffered as much of a shock as you could possibly imagine any energy manager having to receive, which is half of their systems being destroyed by the vicious Russian attacks that were directed by people who actually built the system, so knew exactly where to hit hardest and worst. And the Ukrainians were holding their system together, and one of the things they stressed to me was the importance of a decentralised local systems that were holding up, that helped then support the national system, because the local system was able to function effectively. So we know we're in the age of shocks, and in terms of resilience, having that local basis, I think, is really crucial. Which brings me on to my amendments 237 and 238 in this group, which form together an attempt to really deliver the potential of something that we saw flowering a decade ago and that was then cut off in its prime. And that is community energy schemes, where community groups come together to provide cheaper, greener power and to distribute the benefits locally. Now, the government, I'm sure we're all very, very familiar with the phrase world leading, but I'm afraid when it comes to community energy, it really is impossible for the government to claim any kind of leadership in clean, home-produced energy schemes at the local level. What we saw, as I said, was a decade ago, a real explosion of community-owned and run renewable energy generation projects that were driven by the feed-in tariff. And indeed, I recall visiting Berwick Solar Farm in Sussex with the sadly late Keith Taylor, then MEP for the South East, and that was in 2015. And they said, "This is now dead. This has been killed by what had been the cutting of the feed-in tariff, which of course entirely disappeared in 2019. So these two amendments actually reflect what is contained within the local electricity bill started in the other place. And that has the backing of 314 MPs from all of the major parties. And that is aiming to help community groups sell the electricity they generate to local customers. This bill is also supported by over 100 principal authority councils and more than 80 national organisations, including the National Trust, WWF, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth and CPRE. So this is a chance with these two amendments to take forward that bill. This is the obvious opportunity to act now. Now, these two amendments, Noble Lords will notice, have been kindly backed by the Noble Lady Baroness Boycott, the Noble Lord Lord Teverson and the Noble Lady Baroness Young of Old Scone, so it has full cross and indeed non-party support, and I believe we'll also be hearing other Noble Lords speaking in support. Now, similar amendments 242F and 242G have been tabled by the Noble Lord Lord Lenny and the Noble Lady Baroness Blake of Leeds. I have got a list setting out the differences. Perhaps in the interest of time, I will leave it to those Noble Lords to set out the details of how they differ. I think they're very much differences in the detail rather than differences in the main content and intent. Now, if we look at the Environmental Audit Committee has looked into the issue of community energy, and it says that the sector could grow between 12 and 20 times by 2030, powering 2.2 million homes and saving 2.5 million tonnes of CO2 emissions every year. That could take community renewable energy generation to 10% of the UK's electricity generation, around 6,000 megawatts. At the moment, however, it's only less than 0.5% of total UK electricity generation capacity, 331 megawatts in 2021. It's not, of course, because of the cost of generating, which has fallen very, very rapidly over the past decade, but due to insurmountable costs in selling the electricity they generate and in providing the operational requirements to become a licensed energy supplier. Initial costs are put at £1 million, which of course is far beyond the scale of most community energy projects. And to make it worse, community energy schemes receive no guaranteed price certainty for the electricity they generate. Under the feed-in tariff, they knew what they were going to get, but that scheme closed to new applicants in April 2019, at which point many schemes that were already well on the drawing board, well advanced, just fell apart. Now, it's not that the government hasn't been trying to encourage it. It's clearly the government's intention to encourage community energy. There was the licence light scheme route to market, but it didn't put reasonable limits on costs, and there was no obligation on fully licensed energy utilities to partner with community groups. More recently, we saw the Smart Export Guarantee, but it also placed a requirement on larger suppliers to purchase the power, but there was no guaranteed purchase price or length of contract, making, again, the lack of certainty killing. Now, just to very briefly set out the details of these two clauses, 237 would provide a guaranteed income for the electricity from small-scale renewable energy generators that's set at a capacity below 5 megawatts. That means communities are properly remunerated and would enable them to raise funds for the existing projects or establish new ones. The guaranteed price will be set annually by Ofgem and an initial contract guaranteed for at least 5 years. Now, Noble Lords will note that this amendment is not restricted to community-owned. It also provides for small businesses or landowners who are operating at a small scale to get this guaranteed price. This new local, secure, resilient energy clearly is something that should be encouraged. Coming to Amendment 238, this provides for community schemes to use the Electricity Supplier Services Scheme to sell the electricity they generate locally. There's no requirement made to do this. They may simply use the export guarantee under the first clause. But, however, if a community energy group wants to sell the electricity it generates directly to the local community, perhaps as an additional incentive to local people to invest, or because it believes it can offer a lower tariff to the less well-off in the community, then this clause allows them to do so. The licensed supplier would manage consumer metering and billing and be able to charge the community energy scheme a reasonable fee for these services. Any profit from the sale of electricity will be returned to the community energy group. And I think, finally, my lords, I think we need to, and I hope the Noble Lord, the Minister, in his summing up will acknowledge the benefits that community energy schemes offer, which are beyond the carbon cuts that come from all kinds of renewable schemes. Community energy, we've seen them operating again and again, investing back in their local community, particularly in energy security schemes. In 2021, community energy groups spent more than £500,000 on energy efficiency upgrades, helping more than 20,000 people reduce their energy bills and stay warm. The effect over time in 2021 alone was a saving of more than £3 million on bills. I'm sure that figure will be a lot higher in 2022, given the level of bills. Also, what we see is job creation. In 2021, community energy schemes across the UK had more than 3,000 volunteers and more than 600 full-time staff, but only about 30% of the staff of the groups actually employed any paid staff. If we actually saw a tenfold increase in these schemes and a professionalisation of the sector, it's been estimated by the Poverty and Environment Trust that you could see 33,000 jobs be created. That would be jobs to be spread, of course, around the country. And I think it's worth finally stressing something that I've seen again and again visiting so many of these schemes, what a core centre of a community these schemes can be, whether it's the Ashton Hayes Zero Carbon Village in Cheshire, Micro-hydro community schemes I visited in Stroud and Mid Wales, indeed in Lawrence Weston in Bristol, where they're going to put up, even under the current difficulties, their own large wind turbine. This is a real way for a community to come together, for money to be circulated within a local community. And surely, I believe levelling up is still the government's agenda. Surely this delivering of local community energy schemes would be a key measure for levelling up.